500 index ended the day with a loss of 54 points, down 1.2%. S&P ending the week at 4450. The Dow down today by 288 points. That was a drop of 0.8%. NASDAQ, the composite index, was down 217, a drop of 1.6%. 10-year yield 4.32%. The 2-year 5.03%. Gold up $12 the ounce to $19.22, a gain of 0.6%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil up 1.1%, $91.12 a barrel. Again, recapping, stocks lower with the S&P down 54, a drop of 1.2%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you, Charlie. We appreciate it. Simone, I don't know about you, but whenever you are in a particular checkout online, depending on whichever retailer you're using, do you ever abandon your cart? Do you keep things in there?
I don't abandon it, okay? I have to say, my Amazon cart is like enormous.
Mine is too.
Other retail, at least it stays. Some other retailers, I put stuff in a cart, I don't click out, and then I'm like, wait, I spent all the time looking for something.
Right, and so I do something similar, especially when I'm on Amazon too. There's things that I'm sort of eyeballing, but hey, maybe if it drops in price, maybe if it's Prime Day or going to the holidays, I'll keep it. But there's a company that's trying to remove that friction when it comes to retail and when it comes to that checking out dynamic there. And who better to chat with us about this than Maju Kulavila, CEO of Bolt payments platform and company, and he's going to talk to us about how AI can help the challenges that are facing the e-commerce world. He's actually joining us on Zoom from Seattle. It's great to have you back and speaking with us again. For those who haven't heard you yet on our program here, talk to us about what Bolt is and what it does.
Great to be back here. The problem you just mentioned, which is people come to an e-commerce site, browse around and end up not buying something. And that is such a huge problem. Like around 98% of shoppers coming to a site does not end up buying something. So Bolt is simplifying that process and make it efficient so more people coming to the site end up buying.
How many retailers at this point use Bolt?
We have hundreds of retailers using Bolt. And if you look at the last year, we historically have been very focused on small and medium businesses, and we introduced our enterprise product last year. So now we have very large enterprise retailers using our product. For example, Revolve. They started using Bolt last year. I worked closely with their leaders. They introduced Bolt, and they saw a 4% increase on revenue just after turning on Bolt.
We know that AI is all the hype right now in so many different industries that it touches. What is it particularly about AI that you think can be used to solve the friction between the issues when it comes to shoppers that might be abandoning some of their carts and the retailers on the other side that are trying to build some of that brand loyalty?
Yeah, AI, as you can hear from the industry, there's a lot of progress happening from a technology perspective. And e-commerce especially, is a great place to get a ton of value from the AI side. First and foremost, you think about if you can recognize a shopper the minute they come to your website. And if you can recognize them, can you provide a very personalized experience for that shopper and make great recommendations? And once you decide to buy something, can we make that buying process very easy and simple, avoid any kind of fraudulent charges, and make that whole process complete? So from a whole perspective, what we are looking at is the root of making all those things possible is knowing the person. Like, can we identify the shopper so you can provide all this great experience? So what we are focused at Bolt is creating this large shopper network that we can track the shoppers across different brands, especially the large brands, and help the brands to identify them so they can provide this great personalized experience using the power of AI and maintain a lifelong relationship with them.
Well, I understand you just recently hired a new president, new CTO. and you have some new big tech initiatives for e-commerce, for checkout, kind of in the lineup. Can you talk to me about what you're trying to do that you weren't doing before?
Yeah, so as we moved into the large enterprise retailers, what we realized is, helping people at the checkout is great, but recognizing the shopper throughout their shopping journey is so important. So we are looking at the identity for e-commerce across the board and using that identity to power the new capabilities like AI. So as we were looking at the new roadmap and technology, it was important to bring in like people who have done this before and have a ton of experience. So couldn't find anyone better than Cal Raman, who drove a lot of early growth at Amazon and Walmart when they were trying to get into e-commerce. And he's going to help us drive our vision forward on building one of the largest shopper network for e-commerce, and then building that identity platform which will power all the AI capabilities for the commerce world.
Whenever you're tracking this, are you able to pull shopping behavior in a sense to see how Americans are spending?
I mean, because we are able to see the actual shopping as well as their buying behavior, we are able to see a lot of data that allow us to see some of the trends.
So what I'm curious about, though, the reason I ask, I want to know, what do you think that tells us about the economy? Because so many people talking about the consumer and what it means and looking forward, and they're thinking there's going to be a pullback. Are you actually seeing any of that?
Well, even with all the views on how things can go down, what we are seeing is there is a continuous improvement on the e-commerce side. Like there is more sales, but the price is increasing. Now the question is the more sale coming from the increase in price, or is it more people are buying? And when we look through the details, what we find is it's more sector-based or category-based. In certain categories, people are shopping more, while some categories they are seeing less than what they saw during the pandemic peak. But one thing is very clear is consumers are still focused on deals and discounts. So there is a real high focus on that. And so the retailers who are able to understand that consumer behavior and provide them very targeted response or deals are seeing obviously a much higher volume than others.
Can I ask you a little bit about just what it's like being a tech startup at a tech startup right now? What are you seeing in terms of it's been a difficult year or two probably. What are you seeing now? Just give me a lay of the land as someone who's had to deal with a tight labor market, but also potentially had to lay people off in the past.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit about, back to the basics on how do you define and find sustainable growth, and how can you have unit economics when you drive that growth. So really focusing on where that growth coming from. For example, for Bolt, we found that our growth is coming from our new enterprise product, helping our brands, and we found immediate market success on that product, and hence I mentioned about the Report case study, clearly demonstrating our products are working. So we had to prioritize. We had to shift our priorities to things that are really working and clicking in the market, and then deprioritize the things that didn't really yield the results what we thought. And then it comes to having the right people and the right talent around you to drive that vision forward. And it all comes at the bottom line is, I spend an enormous amount of time to work closely with the customers and really understanding what matters to them, what are some of the top problems they have, and then aligning our product roadmap so we can work closely with them and deliver results for them. That is what they are looking at do for.
We only have about a minute left, but what's your view on sort of the future of AI and how it impacts this business?
I mean, there are two top things that a lot of retailers, top of mind for retailers. One is return. And one is omnichannel, a lot of people are buying online and picking up at the store. And so when I think of AI, there are very tactical applications. So if you know the consumer, if you know their behavior, how can you help reduce some of the return problems? Or how can you target your customers better at a very deeper level, so you can understand how much they are buying online, how much they are picking from store, and then providing them very targeted experience from that. But a common component, if you look at both of this, is knowing the consumer. So to do any kind of personalization, you got to know the person. And so at Bolt, we really focused on knowing that person, building a consumer network, and then empowering the data to bring some of that AI capability for retailers.
All right, Maju Kuravila, CEO of payments company Bolt, joining us to talk about how AI can help the challenges facing the e-commerce world. Always a pleasure speaking with you, and thank you so much for being back with us. But really interesting conversation, Simone, especially when you think about what we were talking about when it came to us leaving some of our favorite items there in our shopping carts. We'll have more coming up with Simone and myself, but first, let's get a check on the latest world and national news with Nancy Lyons in Washington, D.C.
Thanks, Jeff. A targeted strike against each of the big three automakers is now underway after the United Auto Workers Union failed to reach a contract deal with companies by midnight. President Biden says he knows the companies have made substantial offers, but he says they can do more.
Record corporate profits, which they have, should be shared by record contracts for the UAW. And just as we're building an economy of the future, we need labor agreements for the future.
The UAW is striking at a Ford plant in Michigan, a GM factory in Missouri, and a Stellantis plant in Ohio. Donald Trump is denying accusations that he asked a Mar-a-Lago staffer to delete security footage sought by federal investigators in his classified documents case. In an interview with NBC's Meet the Press, Trump called the charge false.
When they asked for the tapes, I said, sure, they're my tapes. I could afford them. I didn't even have to give them. Just so you understand that, we didn't delete anything. Nothing was deleted.
According to a July indictment, though, the Mar-a-Lago maintenance supervisor allegedly asked the property IT director to delete security footage, saying the instructions came from, quote, the boss. Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers is recovering from surgery to repair a torn Achilles tendon that he suffered in this week's Monday Night Football game. The 39-year-old spoke on the Pat McAfee show about his recovery.
There's a lot of different ideas about the overall length of the rehab. I think what I'd like to say is just because somebody hasn't ever done it a certain way doesn't mean it's not possible.
Rodgers responded to those who say he should retire by saying, watch what I do. Tune in to Bloomberg Radio tonight at 5 Wall Street time when former Vice President and current GOP hopeful Mike Pence speaks with Balance of Power. Global news 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons.
Get the news you need to start your day in just 15 minutes. A strike is on in the auto industry.
New developments in the pursuit of ABC.
Wake up with Bloomberg Daybreak, U.S. edition.
A potential government shutdown looming over the coming weeks.
Upset college football. Available now on your podcast feed. Each weekday morning at 6 a.m. Eastern.
Nobody wins in a strike. We all know that from hard experience.
Subscribe to Bloomberg Daybreak, U.S. edition today on Apple, Spotify, and everywhere you get your podcasts. Bloomberg. Context changes every day.
Interactive Brokers charges USD margin loan rates from 5.83% to 6.83%, rated the lowest margin fees by stockbrokers.com. Their clients can also earn extra income by lending their fully paid shares of stock. Join Interactive Brokers clients from 200 plus countries and territories to invest in stocks, options, futures, funds, and bonds on 150 global markets. Rates subject to change. Learn more at ibkr.com/compare.
Whether you're an in-house counsel or in private practice, Bloomberg Law gives you the edge with the latest in AI-powered legal analytics, business insights, and workflow tools. With guidance from our experts, you'll grasp the latest trends in the legal industry, helping you achieve better results. For the practice of law, the business of law, the future of law, the difference is Bloomberg Law. Learn more at BloombergLaw.com.
Citrin Cooperman presents Tax Chat with Stephen Lee, tax partner and REIT practice leader at Citrin Cooperman.
You know, real estate investors often want to sell their property to use the equity to diversify and grow their portfolio, but the taxes on the sale can be significant. Although a like-kind exchange can defer these taxes, it may limit the level of diversification and growth the investor is seeking. An UPREIT transaction achieves the same tax deferral as a like-kind exchange with the added benefits of exchanging into a more diversified real estate portfolio and gaining access to new capital from selling shares in the REIT. Citrin Cooperman can help with the formation and compliance of an UPREIT and other tax-efficient REIT structures.
For more tax chats from Citrin Cooperman, visit citrincooperman.com. That's CITRIN Cooperman.com. They focus on what counts by providing critical industry insights and professional services to clients for over 40 years.
No one knows where this market will go. Right now, it feels like a wild ride. But one thing's for certain, there's a way through it. And the experience and guidance of a Merrill advisor can help you get there. Because where there's a bull, there's a way. Find an advisor at ml.com/bullish.
Merrill, a Bank of America company. What would you like the power to do?
Investing involves risk. Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner & Smith Incorporated, registered broker-dealer, registered investment advisor. Member SIPC, a wholly owned subsidiary of Bank of America Corp.
Bloomberg Radio, on demand and in your podcast feed.
On the latest edition of the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast, a conversation with Alpine Saxon Woods' Sarah Hunt.
I think there's a lot of things that are on the table. I think job security is definitely part of it for the union. And I think the real question for those three is how you continue to be competitive globally when you've got these issues going on at home and you've got issues with higher oil prices, right? Because those cars are more expensive not only to buy, but to fuel right now, too. So I think that there are a lot of problems right now in the auto sector. And I think for those three in particular, this is not a great time for them to be facing this sort of action.
The emotion here of a president today goes down to the manufacturing multiplier. Years in my youth, where it was simple. A manufacturing job was better than being a TV anchor because it was more productive for America. Is there a manufacturing multiplier still in this nation?
Well, I think there's definitely a manufacturing multiplier, and I think that the targeted strikes are showing you exactly how, when you've changed the manufacturing to each plant does a different thing and gets it to the ultimate end assembly, that I can strike anywhere and I can have a big effect on a giant network in a small way. So there's definitely a problem there. And the question about manufacturing, we're trying to reshore manufacturing, right? So this is part of, I think, the big labor question of when I reshore manufacturing, what's going to happen to prices? And I think globally we're setting ourselves up between energy situations and bringing production back home to have just higher prices across the board. So I think that there's a longer big tail here to some of these discussions that are not just about individual micro situations.
Hear the full conversation on the latest edition of the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Plus, listen anytime on the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash. It's 4:40 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long at Bloomberg. Another weekly loss for the S&P 500 index. 2 in a row, down 0.2% today. Stocks fell as traders weighed the impacts of a strike that hit Detroit automakers while sifting through economic data ahead of the Federal Reserve decision. J.J. Kinahan is the CEO at IG North America, and right here on Bloomberg Business Week, he told us he is concerned about the potential of a widening strike.
I actually think if this lasts for any period of time, the effect may be bigger, and that's truly what I overall worry about, is that the entire transportation sector gets affected, which drives up cost of goods.
And you can hear more of that conversation on the Bloomberg Business Week podcast. Download it wherever you get your podcasts. Auto stocks were mixed today. GM had a gain of 0.9%. Ford shares lower today by 0.1%. And Stellantis was up 2.1%. Down day, though, with the